This is Optimal Relationships Daily, episode 1581. Don't Ever Think That You've Been Forgotten, by Dr. Kelly Flanagan of drkellyflanagan.com. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Thursday edition of ORD, another episode for the parents out there. I'm your host and narrator, Greg Audino, here today with an article from Dr. Kelly Flanagan about how he managed the very difficult feelings that came up for him when he dropped his son off at his first ever apartment. Surely this is an important part of parenthood, but I do think that it comes with themes that non-parents can relate to as well. We'll explore that more at the end, though. First, let's hear this article and start optimizing your life. Don't Ever Think That You've Been Forgotten, by Dr. Kelly Flanagan of drkellyflanagan.com. It's a Saturday in September, and we're moving my oldest son Aiden into Chicago on his 19th birthday. After multiple trips from the moving van to his second-floor apartment, wedging all manner of things through the narrow opening, I know I'll never forget the unit number inscribed upon the door of my first son's first apartment. 1H. I think I've done all my grieving and worrying in advance, but when I depart from there for a 3-hour road trip to Green Bay, where I'll be delivering a sermon the following morning, I discover otherwise. I go through much of the human experience on that ride. But one thought in particular keeps repeating, a sort of wild, comical, half-crazy thought. Someone should call DCFS on me, because I just left my baby boy alone in a big city. I find my hotel, and I fall right to sleep. But then I wake up at 3 a.m. This is not unusual on the morning of a speaking event. What is unusual is that I'm not worrying about the talk. I'm worrying about Aiden doing this big, brave thing, moving to Chicago to chase his dreams of becoming a stand-up comedian. I'm worrying about how it will all turn out. 5 hours later, I take the stage to deliver my sermon. It's a round stage in the middle of a round room, with the band set up right in the center of it. I circle the stage as I speak. During one circuit, I look down, and there is a 3-digit readout attached to the equipment. Glowing up at me in red are these 3 figures. 0, 1, H. My mind doesn't know what to make of a moment like that. It is totally ridiculous, a coincidence of such absurd proportions that it doesn't deserve a second thought, let alone a third thought or a blog post. Move on, my mind says. That's just false hope teasing you. And yet, right there, on a stage in Green Bay, something is happening within me, about 18 inches below my head. My heart is opening up. It's quieting, growing still. To borrow a phrase, I'm experiencing a peace that surpasses all understanding. That part of me doesn't need to explain it, it just gets to experience it. And as I do, this is the thought that works its way up from my heart into my head. It's not necessarily going to be okay. It's going to be, and that is okay. The whole thing recalled to mind one of my favorite passages from one of my most treasured spiritual guides, the late Frederick Buechner. Quote, I think of a person I haven't seen or thought of for years, and 10 minutes later, I see her crossing the street. I turn on the radio to hear a voice reading the biblical story of Jael, which is the story that I have spent the morning writing about. The car passes me on the road, and its license plate consists of my wife's and my initials side by side. When you tell people stories like that, their usual reaction is to laugh. One wonders why. I believe that people laugh at coincidence as a way of relegating it to the realm of the absurd, and therefore not having to take seriously the possibility that there is a lot more going on in our lives than we either know or care to know. Who can say what it is that's going on? But I suspect that part of it, anyway, is that every once and so often we hear a whisper from the wings that goes something like this. You've turned up in the right place at the right time. You're doing fine. Don't ever think that you've been forgotten. End quote. I write this from a conference in Wichita, Kansas, in a breakfast diner before sunrise. I just got done FaceTiming with my other 2 children who are back in Illinois and about to depart for a soccer game and a cross-country meet. Why did I make such a point of calling them this morning? Is it because an old man's wishes of luck from 1,000 miles away will make any difference in their performances? No. It's because the biggest difference maker in any of our lives is to be reminded that we haven't been forgotten. When a father or a mother, or a husband or a wife, or a human being of any kind does this for us, it reminds us that they take us with them when they go, that we are a permanent fixture within them, that they remember us in spite of every other thing they're trying to remember. We call that love. When something bigger than any of us goes out of its way to remind us of the very same thing, we call it something else. We call it grace. May you today watch for grace and quit calling it coincidence. And may you, so opened up and quieted down by that grace, pass it on in the form of love to someone in your orbit. May you reach out and let them know that they've been remembered, perhaps at the very moment in which they're feeling the most forgotten. And in doing so, may you become someone else's more graceful than we cared to comprehend digital readout, 01H. You just listened to the post titled, "Don't Ever Think That You've Been Forgotten," by Dr. Kelly Flanagan of drkellyflanagan.com. And thank you to Dr. Kelly for that really touching post. Also a post that displays a lot of strength, however. There was definitely a certain part that stood out for me today, and that would be his line, "It's not necessarily going to be okay, it's going to be, and that is okay." You know, one of the things in life that we will always live with is uncertainty. It's as consistent as they come, and I think a line like that is our best means of living with that uncertainty. Whether it's uncertainty about an event, or about a feeling, or about a fact, it can be so detrimental to ignore this in our ruthless pursuit for answers. Doing so only provides more resistance to uncertainty, and it strengthens a need for control that ultimately stems from insecurity. These Thursday episodes are usually saved for the parents, but I think we all know what it's like to hold on to something very tightly, trying to make sense of it and gain control over it. Caring a lot is not the problem, but we might consider pairing this care with the regular practice of letting go a little bit, being open to a life without the object of our affection if we have to live one. Food for thought as we wrap up today, everyone. Thank you so much for coming as always and making another episode possible. More parenting content coming tomorrow in the Friday show too. So stay tuned for that, and I'll talk to you then, where your optimal life awaits.